We continue our series of ongoing conversations with the 17 candidates on the ballot for Denver mayor with State Representative Leslie Herod. Welcome back to Next.
Thanks for having me.
Most of the candidates for Denver mayor say that they will forcibly clear homeless encampments. You have said that you will not do that. So let's talk about how your plan would work. If somebody living on the streets turns down your administration's offers for shelter or for treatment or for other services, what practically happens with that person?
Yeah. Well, listen, 9 in 10 people living on the streets right now want to be in shelter. They want to be housed. Imagine a Denver where 9 in 10 of the people who are living in encampments right now are not in encampments anymore, are not on our streets, are housed. That is the #1 priority of my administration, will be to get folks in that housing. And we've got a plan to do it. We know that Denver, DPS, and RTD own the majority of the vacant lots in Denver. A majority of those Denver sites can be utilized for social housing and for things like the Village Collaboratives are doing, which are temporary shelters for people who are living on the streets. Housing that people want to be in. That will be the priority of the administration.
So you're going to offer people those shelter sites to go to.
Yes.
We know that some of these same surveys of people experiencing homelessness, that they're not comfortable with the current shelter system that's out there. They do not want to go into the current shelter system.
Right.
So what happens, though, if you're not able to scale up the number of units or somebody is service resistant? Because you said there's going to be that core you described as 10% that don't want to go. What then happens?
I don't believe we should criminalize homelessness. We should get people in shelter and in housing. And the plan that we have gets housing up immediately. We can turn around housing within a few weeks of the start of the administration, of day one. And that will be our priority, is to get people into that housing. We know we can do it quickly because Denver already has.
Yeah, so why do you think the Hancock administration hasn't scaled it up? If it's so simple, if people will go and it'd be so simple to scale up, why aren't they doing it?
Yeah, well, listen, we know that Denver feels like the mayor and the city maybe is not prioritizing what the people want to see happen right now. We need leadership in the city that's willing to take this on and say, this is the plan to make it happen. You know, I started Caring for Denver, which provides mental health and substance misuse services for people living right here in Denver. 25% of those are unhoused today, to get them into housing and to get them into shelter. And we've got great outcomes. 86% of the people that we move from Denver jail and Colorado Corrections into community, they don't reoffend, they don't use drugs, they actually go on the path to sobriety and to being a productive member of society. And that's what we're going to focus on in my plan, things that actually work and making sure that the needs of the people are met.
So tell me if you think this is a fair characterization of what you're saying. You're saying that if you offer the right types of shelter options to people,
yes,
that you can clear 90% of the encampments, and 10% of them will remain because you will not go and forcibly arrest people for being homeless or for urban camping. Is that a fair characterization of what you think?
I think that's somewhat fair, but what I would say, Kyle, is that once people see the housing that we're offering, the services that we're offering, and people start spreading that word amongst those who are living unhoused, we'll see more people want to go into housing as well. Right now, there's a lot of lack of trust when it comes to the unhoused population and the city administration. So it's no wonder they're saying, we don't trust you to provide that supportive housing that we need. But when they see their friends, their neighbors, their family members going into these homes, real homes, I believe that more so will say, absolutely, I want to go. And talking to DPD, Denver Police Department, they don't want to forcibly remove folks out of encampments either. They want to focus on crime happening to people every day. That will be, again, a priority of the administration. We need to get people in housing. To move people into jail costs over $200 a day if they don't have severe mental illness or any type of health condition. So if they do, which we know a lot of folks living on the streets absolutely do, we're talking about $500 a day to house people in the Denver jail. That doesn't make any sense. And for how long? Until they can find housing? Are they shopping for housing while they're incarcerated? It doesn't actually make sense. What we know that people need is to transition into safe and stable housing inside, and that's what we'll do.
So to contrast you with the folks in the race saying that as a last resort they would arrest people.
Yeah.
Suppose that 90% of the folks living on the streets don't end up wanting the housing. It sounds like then we end up with a status quo situation. Do you have a backup plan if your theory about who will go into housing turns out not to be right? Because the backup plan for a bunch of the other candidates is we're going to arrest them. We're going to take them to jail.
Right.
So what's your backup plan?
There is no reason why we should criminalize homelessness. If you are simply sleeping on the streets because you have nowhere else to sleep, that should not turn you into someone who goes into jail, period. And I believe, again, with our plan, that we will be able to move the majority of folks back into housing. Now, listen. that moves us back to the Denver that we used to have. The time during, for instance, the DNC, where we all came to downtown, we all came all across Denver to celebrate the Democratic National Convention together, bring our kids downtown. That's the Denver that we want to get back to, especially when it comes to our unhoused population. A cleaner, safer Denver that's secure for all.
Why do you suppose that you're in the minority when it comes to this position in the race? It seems like a lot of the folks in this race think that public opinion does not agree with you, that public opinion is calling for forcible removals, arrests, that kind of thing.
Well, it's not just about public opinion, it's about what's right. And I believe that we have to have a compassionate approach to homelessness and a lot of our issues facing Denverites today. We've come out of a tough time, and a lot of Denverites are, quite frankly, breaking. Families, people are hurting. We've got to get them what they need, not just throwing folks away or throwing people into jail. That's not the right response. Now, I also don't believe that public opinion wants that, but what they do want is someone with a solution, someone who's going to address the problems today. Right now, people's concerns, people's cries for change have gone unanswered. And folks have had to take it upon themselves to provide solutions. And I believe as a city together, we know that as a city together, we can tackle these issues by just doing the common sense thing, providing the housing, providing the services that people need, stopping people from going into homelessness in the first place. Right now, 3 in 10 Denverites and Coloradans are housing unstable. More Denverites are housing unstable, meaning they feel like they're going to lose their home in 3 to 6 months. We've got to address that as well. Affordable housing is at crisis levels right now in Denver. It's no wonder people are living on the streets. People have nowhere to go. We've got to provide a solution to this housing crisis we're in today.
And we know, of course, that people's first step into homelessness is not always an encampment. It's crashing on somebody's couch, or they're in a car, or they're in some kind of situation.
Sleeping in their car, which is also not right now, not sanctioned in Denver.
So one last question to wrap this up, and I think that you alluded to it in your last answer. Is it that you think that public opinion is with you on this, or that you think the right thing to do differs with public opinion and you want to change minds?
Listen, I've been a legislator for 7 years, and I know that there are tough decisions that you have to make. And at the end of the day, when we're making those tough decisions, you've got to go inward and decide what you know is right and why the people elected you. People elect leaders because they agree with their values, they agree with their approach. The number one thing for me is to lead with the people first, to lead with compassion. That should be all of our first approaches. And I know that Denver is there too. Again, we passed Caring for Denver with 70% of the vote. Denverites said we absolutely care. We absolutely want to get people the help that they need. Because if I find myself in a tough time like that, if you or your kids or your family, any of us find ourselves in a tough time like that, we would hope that the people of Denver, the city of Denver, would have our backs and support us as opposed to throwing us away.
We spent a lot of time on that issue, but everybody seems to agree that it's very important. Let me ask you about another tough issue that you dealt with at the state legislature. Colorado's dealing with the fentanyl epidemic. In 2019, you voted to reduce criminal penalties for fentanyl possession. 2022, you voted to increase penalties for fentanyl possession. Now in 2023, you're saying that what you did in 2022 was wrong. Can you explain this back and forth and back again on this issue?
Yeah, and it's really not that complicated. So the war on drugs is failed. It's not working. It's never worked. Back when I passed the bill to felonize simple possession of drugs only for people who were addicts, right? Only for users. We did that with bipartisan support, including a law enforcement officer from Southern Colorado, a Republican, my good friend, Representative Shane Sandridge, who came on board with this bill and said, we absolutely have to get this done. It makes no sense to bring people into the revolving door of incarceration, poverty, and addiction. We've got to break the cycle, and that's what we did with that bill. Now, the fentanyl epidemic was coming. We knew it was coming. And when it got here, we have to address how and why. Fentanyl came in these small little pills because we put these absurd gram and weight limits on drug possession. So drugs got smaller and they got stronger and more deadly. Fentanyl is killing people today. And so what we did with this bill was not just reduce the gram limit for fentanyl possession, which quite frankly, I don't think that that's working. But what we did do was we increased services. We increased medically assisted treatment in jails, things that we have not been able to do in the Colorado General Assembly since I've been there. In fact, we put millions of dollars into recovery and harm reduction programs in that bill.
You're talking about the 2022 bill?
The 2022 bill.
Okay. You also raised the criminal penalties, which you're saying is an ineffective way to deal with the drug epidemic. dynamic?
We raised the criminal penalties for dealers and for high-level offenses, and then we changed the gram limit for the possession of fentanyl to less. To 1 gram or less is still that misdemeanor offense, which still has jail time, still carries 18 months jail time. And I know now, looking at the data, that what we're finding is implementation jurisdiction by jurisdiction that's different. So the interpretation of the law around possession, who's actually knowingly using fentanyl versus those who are not, is not being clearly interpreted. And we're seeing an increase in the prison population because of that uneven enforcement across Colorado. We've got to change that. We've got to provide clarity in the law that says if you are using simple possession, we first want to get you help. In that bill we passed in 2017, it also included provisions that said if you are a chronic user, if you are arrested multiple times for possession, that you do still have that felony enhancer.
Are you going to bring that bill this session to fix what happened last session that you're unhappy with? Are you going to bring it this session?
At this point in the session, it's up to the Speaker to determine if a late bill gets introduced or not, but I do look forward to having that conversation, and I have committed to putting that request on her table.
So you will request the Speaker put up a bill
Absolutely.
to fix what specific aspects of what
specifically to clarify what simple possession is in the law, because right now I'm very concerned that the people who are being tried under the misdemeanor portion of the law are able to afford a defense attorney. And that
was an issue that came up when you guys were talking about the bill last year.
Yeah,
you knew that was a possibility.
Well, no, the bill was changed at the last minute, and that was not something that I agreed to, was a change in that language. At the time when we consulted with the folks who were working on the bill, we all decided that the harm reduction and the services that were in the bill were worth moving the bill forward, and that's what we did. And it was a tough decision. Like any bill or any measure in the General Assembly, though, we have to go back every single year and determine if we made the right call. And if we see things that are not right, we've got to change that. In the bill, there's also a study to look at the enforcement of that law, to look at who is disproportionately impacted by the decisions that were made by the General Assembly. We have not seen that in the past. And so I look forward to seeing the outcome of that study as well.
So the state legislature is kind of like a couple-month sprint. Race for mayor is a couple-month sprint, and they basically overlap with each other. You're choosing to keep your job in the legislature while run for mayor. How are you able to do that without shortchanging the people who sent you to the state legislature?
Well, that's an interesting question because, quite frankly, it's pretty common in politics, and I'm not sure why in this race it's any different. I worked for President Barack Obama in 2012 with his campaign, and he was in the Senate when he ran for president. We have two legislators that were serving in the Colorado General Assembly while they went through tough primaries, and then now are in Washington in Congress. We are able to chew gum and walk at the same time. I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying that we're getting the job done. The people of House District 8 have sent me to do a job that I'm doing, but I'm also looking to run for mayor so that we can make real change for the people of Denver.
You've been a pretty vocal leader on a number of things over the last couple of years at the state legislature. Have you had to scale back some of that work in order to focus time at the legislature?
Well, listen, I have made a determination that I'm not going to run 40 bills this year as I have in the past. We have a 5-bill limit for individual legislators, and then on the Joint Budget Committee, we tend to run more, or as leaders of the different caucuses, we run more.
Yep. And
now we have a much larger Democratic leadership in the State House, and so it's important as we think about transitioning that we allow them a chance to lead. In fact, many bills that I have looked to run in the past are now being run by other legislators, and allowing that leadership and that transition is important. And so right now I am serving as someone who is running bills for my district, but also helping others to lead.
One thing that you've led on at the state legislature is police reform. Yeah. Following George Floyd's murder. How does the Denver Police Department change if you're the mayor?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question because I am so proud of the work that we did as Coloradans to rise to the moment when George Floyd was murdered. We all saw it. And then additionally with the murder of Elijah McClain and unfortunately so many others, costing the city and county of Denver millions of dollars in settlements. As mayor, I will be looking at that, taking a hard look at that. What can we do to ensure that we have the best police force in the nation? My dad is law enforcement, a retired law enforcement officer of 30 years, started as a groundskeeper at Supermax Prison and worked his way up to the head of internal investigation. I know what it's like to not know if your loved one is going to come home or not, but I'm proud to say that my dad came home every single day and I think served and protected in a way that we would all be proud of. I want to see every member of the Denver Police Department be able to walk with that type of integrity in community. And that's what we'll focus on. We'll make sure that they have access to the right training, We'll make sure that they have investigators to really investigate crimes and break up some of the rings that are happening around car thefts in Denver today. That's what we'll focus on. And yes, we will have less use of excessive force and less settlements under a Herod administration.
Is that getting rid of officers, or is that better training, or is that both?
It's a combination. We shouldn't keep bad officers on the payroll in the city and county of Denver, but we also need to stop it before bad actions happen. We don't want to see another mother crying because their child was just killed by law enforcement on the streets, or we don't want to see another situation in which law enforcement is shooting into a crowded bar in downtown Denver. We want to stop those things before they happen. That happens with making sure that we have the best trained officers on the force. So it is combined, but we've also got to flag folks along the way. We can't coddle folks who are not right for the job and keep them in the position.
A couple quick questions to wrap up. You've said that all of Denver's neighborhoods should have affordable housing. That often means density.
Yes.
Some of your opponents, including Kwame Spearman, have said that certain neighborhoods, often the ones with the larger lots and the more expensive homes, are not built for density. You know that you're going to face opposition in some parts of the city that
Yes.
have more of a suburban feel. What would you say to Denverites who don't want the look and feel of their neighborhood to change?
It doesn't have to. The great thing is that we can combine things like more duplexes, quads, and triplexes, more neighborhood or more housing that's diverse. Still brick, still a part of our neighborhood, like my neighborhood of Park Hill. I want to see more options. I would love to be in a duplex right now, but there are so few and far between. But they still fit in the character of Park Hill. They don't stick out like a sore thumb. We can use the same size lot and get more housing in that space. That's what we need to do. That's how we have starter homes. That's how we have that diverse housing stock. So we can still do that. But yes, we do need to have more units that might look like high rises. Those can come into parts of downtown where we need that density and we need more activation. So it's about a diverse housing stock. And I know and I believe that when the neighbors are at the table and we talk about, would you like to downsize but still stay in your own neighborhood and community? Would you like your kids to grow up here and be able to buy their first home with your grandbaby in your own community? The answer typically is yes. Just show me what that looks like and let me be a part of it. And so part of the administration will be similar to what I've done in the past, which is bringing everyone to the table and keeping them at the table until a plan is made.
Is part of that getting more heavy-handed with what developers can build in what areas, the aesthetics of things like that? Because when you're describing homes that fit in neighborhoods, if you just tell people, build a duplex, you and I both know it's going to look like Noah's Ark, and there's going to be tiny little windows up on the side of it. You know what I mean? Like, are you talking about getting more heavy-handed with
Yeah, I
developers?
do.
Okay.
I do think so. I do think that we should have look and feel. But here's why. As someone whose family has lived in affordable housing, I don't want to see affordable housing pop up where you have windows that are this big, where people can't see out or in. You don't get sunlight. You make people feel like they're worth less. That's not okay. We can still beautify this city and have a very, very beautiful and vibrant neighborhoods by building what people want to see and by allowing folks to live in homes that don't scream out, you can't afford to live anywhere else. What does that do for someone's pride? What does that do for someone's mobility? We should be able to build homes that fit the character of our neighborhoods, but that also have expanded to the growing parts of Denver. We can have that beauty. We don't need to create boxes that don't make sense for our neighborhoods.
One last question for you, and this is just purely about the horse race. This is just about the politics of things.
Yeah.
And feel free to disagree with this characterization of the lanes in the races. I kind of see them. So as you look at a race with 17 candidates in this, people make sense of this.
Yeah.
You kind of got like a progressive lane that has just a few candidates. A lot of them are long shots. You got Lisa Calderon, Ian Thomas Tafoya, Jim Walsh, Terrence Roberts there. And then you've got this very crowded lane of candidates that include some long shots, but also a bunch of the potential front runners that are all promising a hard line against homelessness and crime.
Yeah.
You've got Kelly Brough and Chris Hansen, Debbie Ortega and Kwame Spearman, Thomas Wolfe, Trini Rodriguez, Andy Rougeau, Religia Martinez, Robert Tretta. There's a lot of people there.
Yeah.
You and Mike Johnson are kind of a little bit harder to pin down because you've worked within the establishment systems, yet you also have some progressive ideas and credentials as well. How do you see the race and how do you see your role in it?
I think that's a good assessment. I would just add in the fact that Denver wants someone who can deliver real results, and I have a history of doing that. we created Caring for Denver as a city. I led that initiative. And because of that, we were able to fund and start STAR, Support Team Assisted Response, which is now an agency under 911 that when you call 911, you get a mental health provider and an EMT. STAR is working. In fact, your viewers have supported it with, quite frankly, a huge investment to continue to get that program going. It is now an agency within the city and county of Denver. I'm the only one running that has built something within the city and county of Denver that the people and law enforcement, activists, harm reductionists have all asked for, right? So I think that's what makes me unique. In this very crowded field, people are going to want someone who can lead, who will deliver results. And I think they're bold ideas as well. Denver is still a town of innovators, a town that wants to take risks, a town that wants to move things forward. And right now, folks are feeling stagnant. And that's why I'm running for mayor.
Leslie Hurd, we'll leave it there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.